Nothing more to tell. Trip, 4 years ago. I was sitting in the birch grove in the woods behind St. Ambrose on Wednesday afternoon, music blaring through my earbuds as I watched my breath fog the air while I wait for Shane Delago. It's not quite mid-April, one of those unseasonably cold days that feels like an extension of winter, and the trees aren't fully green yet. I'm not sure the timing is right as Miss Singh put it, as Miss Singh put it, create a leaf collection showcasing the diversity of species in the area, but oh well, nobody asked for my opinion. My 3-ring binder is thicker than I need for a 12-leaf project. It's plastic sleeves full of leaves I plucked from my backyard this morning. I figured I might as well get a head start because I've been Shane's lab partner since January, and I know for a fact that I'll end up doing all the work. Shane is the type of St. Ambrose kid who skates by because he doesn't have to worry about hanging on to a scholarship. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He's so relaxed. In fact, he's known for taking the occasional nap in our class coat room. Teachers even joke about it in a way that they never would if I were the one falling asleep whenever I felt like it. I know it's pointless to be jealous of somebody like Shane, but today I wish I were him, or anyone really, except me. Chapter 4. Trip. My interview after Mr. Larkin's murder was the first time I'd ever been inside a police station. We frantically called our parents, well, Shane's parents, even though they were at work in Boston, because everybody knew instinctively that my dad wasn't equipped to deal with the situation. The Delagos contacted the Sturgis police, and we all met up in the St. Ambrose parking lot so we could lead the officers to Mr. Larkin. Everything was a blur, so surreal that I barely remember it until we were brought into the station to give our statements. When my dad showed up, I was taken into a small room away from Shane and Charlotte. I understood, even then, that the police needed to know if our stories matched up. I pushed the image of Mr. Larkin out of my mind and did the best to answer Officer Pat's questions. I thought back then that he was in his 40s like my dad because most adults look middle-aged to me, especially ones with receding hairlines. I learned later that Officer Patz was just 25 then, the same age as Mr. Larkin. Why are we in the woods, Trip? Doing a leaf project collection for science class. We're supposed to identify 12 species and mount the leaves on our binders. I brought my binder with me to the station. Someone had taken it when I arrived then, and about half an hour later given it back. Why were you with Shane and Charlotte? Shane's my lab partner and Charlotte is his friend. Why didn't they have binders like yours? Because I knew they could dump all the work on me, and I'd do it. That was the truth, but I didn't say it. Because St. Ambrose scholarship kids are supposed to be grateful, not bitter. What I actually said was, they forgot. Where was Charlotte's partner? I couldn't get away from Bryn Gallagher. Even when she didn't show up, she was there. I don't know, is all I said, and he didn't push it. Did you, Shane, and Charlotte ever separate, lose sight of one another? Before my mother left, she really talked to me like a parent. Lisa Marie left the basics of life, like how to brush my teeth, and prepare a bowl of cereal to my father, but sometimes she liked to ramble about things she found interesting when I was nearby. It was more like she was talking near me than to me, but I still soaked it up. More than once she said, the world would be a better place if more people knew when to stop talking. Everyone says too much all the time. Ask them a simple question that will give you their entire life story. No one cares. Just say yes or no. It doesn't even matter which one is true. I rubbed the callus on my thumb with my forefinger and said, no. Not even for a minute or two? No. And how did you happen across Mr. Larkin? This was the important part, I knew, so I took a few seconds to organize my thoughts before answering. We were near the edge of Shelton Park, you know, where the people go to watch birds sometimes. There was this huge tree branch that had fallen, like it had been struck by lightning or something. Charlotte said it would be easy to find good leaves on it, so we walked towards it, and then we saw something white behind the branch. It was a sneaker. Did you know right away that it was a sneaker? No, I thought maybe it was trash or a paper bag or something, but then we got closer. How much closer? I don't know, close enough to tell there was a sneaker. Okay, and then what? Then we saw Mr. Larkin. We spent a lot of time on that part. It felt like hours. Officer Pat's asking question after question about Mr. Larkin and the space around him. They would know he was dead right away. They would touch him. They would see or hear anyone nearby. There was a rock next to him. It was big and sharp, and it had blood on it. How did you know it was blood? It was red and it looked wet. Did you touch it? Shane did. He picked up the rock and turned it over and got blood all over his hands, some on his pants, too. Do you think that was a good idea, to pick up the rock? A long pause while I stared at the 4 deep even scratches on the table surface. I imagined they'd been put there by a demon claw. Some creature the Sturgis police had tried to capture and hold, but couldn't. I don't know. I guess I wasn't really thinking about it at all. Anything else you want to tell me, Trip? No, there's nothing more to tell. When we were finally done, Officer Pat thanked me and sent me home with my father. Dad heard later through the grapevine that all 3 of us had said the exact same thing. Everyone was sympathetic about how traumatic the experience of finding a dead body of our teacher must have been, and our neighbors kept dropping off casseroles and desserts for me and Dad. They hadn't done anything like that for years before when my mother had taken off. I guess it's not much of a tragedy when people choose to leave. Then, less than a week later, I got called back to the police station. Trip, are you aware that money was stolen from your school recently? Of course I was aware. The money had gone missing at the end of March and had caused an uproar at St. Ambrose. It was practically the only thing Brent had written about in the Sentinel for weeks. Yeah, it was for the 8th grade field trip to New York. Do you know how much it was? No. A lot? Probably. No, scholarship kids can't go, so nobody gets to go. So it caused a lot of division in our class between the paying kids and the scholarship kids. St. Ambrose liked to pretend that we were all the same, but everyone knew who was who. Did you know Mr. Larkin was heading up the school's investigation of that theft? Yeah, sure. Trip, I'm going to share some information with you that recently came to light. The money stolen from your school was found in Charlotte Holbrook's locker last Friday during routine search of St. Ambrose. What do you think about that? I could have told him that there was nothing routine about it. St. Ambrose students had never been searched before, let alone by a Sturgis cop. But the class money had been missing for about 2 weeks by then, and Grizz was on the edge and looking for somebody to blame. I doubt Grizz wanted that person to be Charlotte Holbrook, though. I doubt she would get into any trouble at all. That seems like the sort of thing Officer Patz could figure out for himself, though. I guess I'm surprised, I said. What surprises you? That I was there. Did Charlotte take it? Officer Patz didn't like when I asked questions, or at least he rarely answered them. Are you and Charlotte friends, Trip? No. That was true back then. Are you friends with Shane Delago? No. Also true. I don't remember all the questions that followed, but at some point Officer Patz shifted the conversation towards me. We spent some time talking to your classmates, Trip, and you seem to be pretty well liked. Some kids told us you could be a little bit mean, though. Oh, yeah? Who? I asked it offhand like I had no idea what he was talking about, even though I was pretty sure he meant Bryn. My dad, who seemed half asleep during most of the conversation, stirred to life and leaned forward, elbows on the table. What does it matter? He asked. Kids not getting along isn't a crime. Of course not, Mr. Talbot. I'm just trying to get a better sense of who Trip is. He's a good kid. A good, honest kid who's doing his best to help you. I should have been grateful for him for saying that, but I wasn't. The only thing I wanted right then was for my father to shut up so we could leave. It's past 6 when I get off work, so I text Dad after I say goodbye to Regina and close the bakery door behind me. What's the dinner situation? Non-existent. He writes back, couldn't make it to the store today. Should I pick up Chinese? That'd be great. I'll pay you back. He will. Eventually. I call the Golden Palace and place our usual order, shrimp fried rice and beef with broccoli, which are by far the best items on the menu. The owners like to coat most of their proteins and batter and fry them to death. A couple years ago, Shane's parents took a bunch of us to Chinatown for dim sum, and it was the first time I'd had authentic Chinese food. I must have eaten my weight in dumplings alone. I couldn't believe how good they were. I was into Golden Palace ever since, but they're fast, cheap, and right down the street. I walked past Ricky Hardware and Paws at Moe's barbershop with the door half open when someone's having no luck pushing it the rest of the way, so I grab the handle and tug. Hey, Mr. Russ, I say. A small white-haired man peers up at me with watery blue eyes. Excuse me? He says uncertainly, and then his expression clears. Oh, hello there, Noah. Mr. Solomon, who used to be the groundskeeper at St. Ambrose before he retired, has never been a fan of nicknames. I didn't recognize you at first. Oh, you kids are so big now, my goodness, practically adults. It happens, I say in a weird, hearty tone that's nothing like my usual voice. I don't know why old people bring that out in me, especially Mr. Solomon, who's gotten kind of spacey lately. His left hand is clutching a red tackle box, but I know better than to ask him if he's going fishing. He started using it like a portable bank, pulling a pile of crumpled bills from it whenever I see him at the grocery store or the pharmacy. Makes me sad in a way I can't explain. I find myself asking, how's your garden going? Which is a pointless question in January, but he brightens anyways. It's seen better days, but I made some improvements to the yard. Mr. Solomon lives on the line between Sturgis and Stafford, the much nicer town where Shane is from. When I was a kid, I used to imagine Mr. Solomon's place was a portal to a different dimension because it looked like some kind of magical garden that didn't belong in New England, climbing vines everywhere, fruit trees and flowers as big as your head. I should stop by and see it sometime. Catch up a little. I'll make us some tea. Sounds great, I say, hoping he knows as well as I do that it won't happen. I gotta run, Mr. S. I'm picking up dinner. You got the door there? I'm still holding it because he hasn't moved. The frown crosses his leathery face. You're in my way, he says peevishly, because nostalgia time is over. Sorry, I say, stepping aside so he can shuffle past me with a side eye. I know he's just a confused old guy, but it's stuff like this, that I can't go 2 feet in this town without feeling like somebody's judging me, and that makes me so desperate to leave. I get to Golden Palace well before the food's ready, so after I pay, I settle myself onto the bench in the vestibule, barely registering that a man is already sitting at the other end until he speaks. Well, if it doesn't Trip Talbot. I used up all my sociability being nice to Mr. Solomon, so my mood plummets even before I see who it is. Oh, hey, Officer Patz. He's bundled up in a down parka scarf and Patriots wool hat. Even though the hat is fully covering his head, I've seen Officer Patz around town enough to know that he's embraced his receding hairline with a shaved head. Picking up dinner? He asks. No, I just really like this bench, I think, but I don't say it because I'm not an idiot. You too? My wife loves this place. He says, cool, I say, wondering briefly if I knew before now that Officer Patz is married. Then I decide I don't care and turn back to my phone, but before I can pull up a game to keep me busy, Officer Patz speaks again. I hear St. Ambrose is doing a memorial garden for your teacher, Mr. Larkin, he says. I just nod, non-committal, and silence falls until he adds, I still think about that case sometimes. You know, you're the first witness I ever interviewed for a murder investigation. The first and last, probably. Sturgis has plenty of low-level crime, but there hasn't been another murder since Mr. Larkin. Well, that doesn't seem like the right response, so I say, oh yeah? As politely as I can. It's a tricky thing, interviewing kids, he says, and I don't know what he wants from me. Am I supposed to apologize for having been 13? Last kid I talked to witnessed a robbery, kept changing his story. First he said one thing, then said another, kept forgetting stuff for leaving information out because he didn't think it was important. There's a space heater chugging away in the corner that's making Gold's palace vestibule way too warm. I push my hair off my forehead and say, sounds like he wasn't much of a witness. Officer Patz must have been overheating too because he takes off his hat and folds it between his hands. It's actually not uncommon with kids. I've learned children's memories are less developed than adult memories, plus they're more suggestible and less reliable. Not you, though. You're always very consistent in your statements. I have good memory, I say, stealing a glance at the girl behind the counter. Where the hell is our food? Shannon and Charlotte were lucky you were there, Mr. Pat says. In the woods, I mean. Things could have added up differently if those who had been alone when they found the body. Even when you're dealing with kids, if one of them leaves fingerprints and the other has stolen property in her possession, well, you'd have to keep asking questions. Order for Pat? The girl behind the counter calls. He doesn't get up, so I say, that's you. Officer Patz acts like he didn't hear either of us. His gaze is trained on the wall across from us, and his brow furrowed as though he's lost in thought. I almost believe he was if I didn't catch his eye drifting towards my reflection in the window. But you? You weren't friends with Shane or Charlotte. I interviewed every kid in your class, and they all said the same thing, even the ones that didn't like you. Fucking Bryn. You and Shane didn't get along as lab partners, and you and Charlotte had hardly talked before she tagged along on that assignment. There's no reason for you to lie for either of them. Right, I say, rubbing my thumb. I knew that Memorial Garden was going to be trouble, and here's proof. I can't even pick up shitty fake Chinese food in peace anymore. Why would I? Order for Pat's? The counter girl repeats. Over here, thanks, Officer Patz calls, finally getting to his feet. I relax my shoulders, thinking we're done, but before he goes any further, he gives me one last searching look. That's the question that keeps me up at night. Why would you? Then he puts his hat back on and grabs the food off the counter. Have a good evening, Trip. Enjoy your dinner.